Okay, we are now live.
Thank you, Julian. Today is August 10th, 2021. I call this meeting to order. This is the Public Safety Committee of the City Council. All committee members are present today via Zoom, with Councilor Davis joining us shortly. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on a video or audio conference, and we appreciate your patience as meetings are being conducted this way. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube and our Zoom webinar. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. And for those watching us on the live stream, thank you for joining us. Written comments were received for today's meeting and were also provided to the members of the committee. Members of the public will be able to address the committee if they have signed up for public comment per the rules published on the agenda last week. Members of the public will be moved into the Zoom meeting room once we begin public comment, and they will remain muted until they are called upon to speak, at which point they will have 2 minutes to provide comments to the committee. After that, they will be muted and return to the Zoom webinar where they can continue to observe the meeting live. So we're going to start with public comment. I do believe we have one person that signed up. I'm not sure, Mr. Moya, if that individual has.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have not seen the gentleman join the meeting yet. So maybe if you just want to move on so you don't have to read in all the instructions, we can go to the agenda and I'll let you know if I see him come in.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moya. I think that once he arrives, we'll go over the ground rules for public comment. But with that, we're going to move on to our first agenda item, which is a presentation from the Albuquerque Fire Department's Fire Marshal's Office, both on the Community Connect program and their efforts on the Independence Day on 4th of July. So I believe we have Chief Jean Gallegos to present today.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and council members. I do have Deputy Chief Chris Romero here. He'll be doing the parts for Community Connect and First Due, and then I'll go through the 4th of July efforts. So we will share our screen now. And thank you again for the time that you're giving us on this, to share this information. I think it's, we're really excited about it, and it's really gonna, again, help our responses and help make our responses a lot more effective and efficient. All right, can everybody see?
Yes, great.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. Like Chief said, my name is Chris Romero. I'm the Interim Deputy Chief of the Fire Marshal's Office. Today, I'm going to be presenting the First Due and the Community Connect software. As Chief said, we're really excited about this software, both for our internal members and the community members as well. We put together a presentation that also has a video piece. So hopefully you guys will be able to hear that when we get to it. It's going to break down what Community Connect is and the benefits of it. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started with the First Due software. So the objectives for today, we're going to discuss what First Due is and how it's beneficial to our firefighters. In addition to that, we're going to discuss what Community Connect is and how it's beneficial to both our firefighters and the community that we serve. So you're probably wondering right now what First Due is. First Due is a web-based software. It enables our members with AFR to enter critical information on structures throughout the city of Albuquerque. In the initial stages, when we started building, working with this company to gather all this information, we set up interfaces with a variety of different systems within the city. This data is gathered from the Bernalillo County Assessor's Office, the City of Albuquerque Building Department, Aegis Maps, and then our inspections database within the Fire Marshal's Office. With this software, with it being web-based, firefighters have the ability to enter this information via the MDT or the computer that lives in their unit, their responding unit, or they can actually use a cell phone. We have cell phones that are assigned to each apparatus in the city, so they have 2 means of putting that information in, or if they choose to use their own smart device, it's easily accessible. In addition to that, we have given both APD and BCFD some view-only access. where this comes into play. I know right now we're in the process of entering floor plans for 149 schools within the city and the county, which is beneficial just in terms of seeing how these schools are laid out. So that's something that APD and Bernalillo County Fire have access to currently. So this is a layout of the First Due software. This is what you would see as a firefighter that's going to log in with that view. This is going to be the dispatch location, and if you can see, it's kind of like a Google Map, Google Earth type view. But basically, what we have is all the structures, whether it's residential or commercial, within the city of Albuquerque. At the top, you can see addresses. There's an interface between this software and our computer-aided dispatch, which lives in the 911 center, which I believe you guys have all had an opportunity to visit our dispatch center. But with that being said, the First Due connects an incident with a pre-plan once it's been published. So if you look up the one that's highlighted, you can see that address up there with the blue. That's that particular incident that's happening at that location. Okay, and once we click on that icon, that gives us information. And from a call type in the fire service, if you don't know, call type, it's a trouble breathing call. We have codes that are from 1 to 32, and that call type is listed there. So we click on that medical symbol, it shows the call type that's happening at that particular facility. It also gives some other information on who's responding and what units are currently responding. So that provides some information, to our responders in terms of what they're responding to. And that's going to be that responder view as well. Okay. Once or if our crews are dispatched, you see the modified satellite view, and you can see the location of the call. There's also a piece that from a navigation standpoint, it can provide turn-by-turn directions to our responders, which we have other means of getting there via the MDT on the truck, but that's another option that is available. With the pre-plan information, we have our crews out in the field visiting structures within the city of Albuquerque, and they're doing these pre-incident plans, and they're entering vital information about each structure. This could be maybe a hazmat type of threat that may exist in this building. It could be a variety of different things, but where is the Knox box? Like, how do we get into this facility if it's closed? Where is the fire panel? So if we respond, we know exactly where to go when the responders get there. If this particular layout right here, this is an apartment complex up on Montgomery in the Pennsylvania area, the Ariosas, which you may be familiar with. You can see the building layouts you have, and it may be hard for you guys to see, but it shows what building is where. And this is huge for us because, we get a call to a facility like this. It's like, well, it's in apartment D. Well, where does that live? And to have this visual for our first responders, we can get to that building, quicker. And it's a great tool. You can see the hydrants that are located around there. So from a water supply standpoint, if there was a structure fire, we could utilize, that mapping system to use one of those water supplies to, extinguish a fire. So if you can kind of look at some of the different icons that exist there, the next page, I believe, shows right here with the house. Once we click on that green house, as you can see, it shows the address a little further and some more information there. But once we click on that house, we're going to get the dashboard piece of this. So right there, with a pre-incident plan that's been performed on this property, and this one, it's not the same property that we just discussed. This is actually the Fire Academy. We initially did one here at Fire Admin in the Fire Academy, and we laid out a full pre-incident plan. And you can see some of the icons that will exist in one of these pre-incident plans. We have sprinklers, we have the pre-plan, the K, an automated external defibrillator. Like, where do I find that if someone goes down in cardiac arrest? These are all vital pieces, stairwells, elevator shafts, like I said earlier, Knox boxes, and I think this is a huge piece for us. And the biggest thing with this software is only as good as we are. So all the information that we're putting in when we're doing these pre-incident plans for the units in their responding districts, it's great for us. We also touch this in the fire marshal's office initially when we're doing our inspections. So we'll put some information in when we go to building for the first time. We'll start to get this pre-incident plan going. So when the crew that's assigned to that area comes in, they can add on top of that. So it's got points of contact, which is huge, because I can't tell you how many times we go out and we can't get a hold of, a point of contact or someone that's responsible for that property, and we spend a lot of time waiting there, where if we can get that information available, we can reach out to that point of contact and get someone there, the responsible party, to reset the fire alarm or whatever it may be. So within this dashboard, this will lead me to discuss Community Connect. Before I move on, do you guys have any questions in regards to First Due and the responder view?
Looks like Councilor Bassan has a question. Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one question before we get too much further. Is this something, when you say it's only as good as you are, I love that this is interlinked with APD and Bernalillo County. Can Bernalillo County add information in here on their end if it's something that's maybe outside of the city limits, but perhaps if you all need to go and assist or something, or is this just Albuquerque?
We can use it as well. There's different permission levels. I know recently we went to the Amazon facility, the new Amazon facility. We did a sidewalk there, which falls in county's jurisdiction. But I believe there was a pre-incident plan performed there, and there were some things identified that maybe some icons that were missing. But yes, it can be shared with other agencies outside of just the city of Albuquerque, like you used that example, Councilor Bassan.
I think it's fabulous. Thank you so much.
No problem.
And one thing to note, Madam Chair and Councilor Bassan, is that this system is linked up with Google Earth. So depending on how often they update Google Earth, like the Amazon facility, it's still in Google Earth, it's still in the construction phase. But we go there right now and it's pretty much done. So again, there's some things that we can put in points of contact, and like we're predicting where the Knox boxes are going to be, because the actual guard shacks are not where they're supposed to be in the Google Earth, because Google Earth hasn't caught up with real time right now. So again, there are some deficiencies with the program, but again, they're trying to update them as quickly as possible.
Okay, so moving forward with that dashboard that you just saw, so Community Connect, our firefighters have the ability to enter that dashboard and choose Community Connect, which leads us to this right here. So Community Connect, which you guys are probably all curious about, right? First Due, well, Community Connect, how are we going to work with the community to utilize this information? So Community Connect allows residents and businesses to create life safety profiles in just minutes. And we're going to discuss how they do that here shortly. So here's the video. We're going to go ahead and play it, and hopefully you guys can hear the audio. If not, we may need to enable audio via whoever set up the Zoom, but hopefully you guys can hear this. It's going to give you a good breakdown. Can you guys hear that?
As your fire and EMS agency, we are here to ensure we do whatever it takes to protect
We
you
can hear it, but we can't see anything.
on many
Okay.
valuable pieces of critical information that
Go. So under share screen, can you choose share screen? Or is share screen up top? Oh, okay, right there to the right. More. Keep going. More. Okay. Now share computer sound right there. Right. Yep. Check that. Okay. And then go back one more time and just make sure they can see it as well.
All right, can you guys see it now?
Can you see the screen at all? Okay.
I do not see any video footage.
Share. Right there. Perfect. And then choose that same one. And then we should hopefully be able to see it. Choose that. You need to choose that one. They're not going to be able to see that. No.
There it is.
Can help save lives and property in a real emergency that we don't know until we arrive at your door. Things like how many occupants to expect at your home, if anyone has access or functional needs, or speaks another language, whether or not you have pets or livestock, structural details like where the bedrooms are, or even where hazardous materials may be located. But now, with Community Connect, you have the power to keep us informed of nearly everything that matters, so we can better serve you when emergency strikes. Community Connect is a safe and secure online program available at no cost to all residents that allows you to provide us with critical property and occupant information that we can access at the time of response, leading to better outcomes in case of fire or medical emergency. So, what are some examples of the kind of information you can contribute? First, your family members. Who lives at your residence and how to get in touch during an emergency. Next, your property. Things like where your family's bedrooms are located, your gate and door codes, if you have a pool or basement, how to shut off water and electricity, and even where your family's emergency meeting place is located. Your needs. Details regarding functional needs like mobility, Alzheimer's, autism, severe allergies, visual or hearing impairments, and more. And last but not least, your pets. Their picture, their names, their habits, and even their veterinary information. So no matter what happens, your furry family members are always known about and taken care of. Signing up is easy. From any internet-connected device, it just takes a phone number, email, and an address. Rest assured, all of your data is safe and only available to our first responders during the time of response using the same data security and encryption standards found in online banking. If you have 5 minutes to sign up, please select the link to create your profile and get started helping your first responders help you.
Okay, are you guys able to see the screen again?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We'll move on from there. So that's Community Connect in a nutshell. I have some more things to cover. How easy it is to create an account. So this is step-by-step, directions on how to create it. And I invite you guys here at the end, and I'll show you when. But to set up your own, if you live in the city of Albuquerque, it's really easy. And just like they talked about in that presentation, talks about your property. What are some important pieces? I have a 90-year-old grandma that lives in the back bedroom. We store, a large quantity of oxygen in another room. We have, our pets, which, they're part of our family as well. Where can we find them? So I think that's a great thing for us. Needs, your pets, and that covers everything there. So that shows how to create an account. We'll move to the next slide. We had a member in our fire marshal's office create an account. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what we might see from a responder standpoint when we choose that Community Connect piece in the dashboard on First Due. This is a house of one of our members of the fire marshal's office, and you can see the address, and then you can see the street where it's located, and you can see the houses around him. So once he set this up, this is real time. So as soon as he plugs in this information, we can see that on our side. So if you can kind of look, it may be hard for you guys to see. You can see that they have 3 residents under the age of 18. What are some other things? Our pets, they have 2 fluffy pets and a dog, and it's hard for me to see as well from where I'm at. But either way, a point of contact. That's our member in the fire marshal's office. It has a phone number. So this is one of those things where, like I said, on the other side, this is as good as the people that are going to be putting this information in. So if we can get this out to the community and have them, buy into putting their information in, because I know there will probably be questions like, is my stuff secure? Is this information that I'm going to give be shared with anyone? And as you saw in the portion from First Due and Community Connect, that's encrypted information. It's not shared. So probably wondering, like, how do we get the word out? Here's some literature that we're going to utilize to try to get the word out to various people within the community. This is some stuff that was created by the PIO's office. We have some postcards that maybe could be mailed out, could be given out at Balloon Fiesta. With that one on the bottom left-hand corner, if you guys are interested, and it probably maybe now's not the time, but if you utilize your iPhone, you can scan that, or a QR code reader. It'll take you directly to the Albuquerque Community Connect page, and you can start setting up your profile immediately. So that's one. The one on the right, this is for our business as well. So obviously we have the residential piece, but if I'm a business owner within the city of Albuquerque, I also have the ability to do the same thing that I did for my residents for my office. And maybe there's some things within my business that are important to me and that I would like for the first responders to know about if they respond. Just like you did for the residential piece, there's also the piece with the business side of things. One thing that you'll have to do though is utilize a different email because you can only use one email per whether it's a residence or a business. So I would hopefully have a business email that I could utilize for the business piece of that. But really great tool. We have some other things that we can push out. I know we have access to billboards and that type of thing. So from a marketing standpoint and just getting the word out to the community, we definitely have some tools to do that. With that being said, what questions do you guys have, whether from First Due or Community Connect, that we can help maybe help you understand or answer for you?
Counselors, any questions? Counselor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This seems incredible in theory. How do you recommend we try to communicate with the public on their hesitation maybe for putting in door codes and layouts of their home? When it's a safety issue, I understand, but I worry about the skepticism of many people, even though it says it's an encrypted system, safe as the bank.
Right. And that may be challenging, but I believe, in terms of whether we're utilizing social media or whatever avenue we choose, just trying to reinforce that it is. And I know that may be tough. Like you said, with banking stuff, I mean, those things are always, identity theft, or those types of things happen all the time. But I think just, hearing that from the fire department and, just getting people's buy-in on it, if you continue to see it and hear people saying that, this is a safe website. And I think the benefits outweigh maybe the potential negative pieces that, Councilor Bassan, you're speaking of. Like, gosh, there's always this small chance, but man, my animals or my grandma or my family member, I feel like those outweigh it. It'll be challenging, but I think it's doable, for us as an agency to get that buy-in from the community.
Thank you.
Councilor Davis has joined us. Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, this is great. I do love this program. It's very cool. My question would be, as we have updated our fire safety code and our requirements for like alarm fees, et cetera, is there any conversation or consideration of requiring, say, commercial property owners or managers to participate in this program as part of their fire alarm service or something else, so that there's like an annual reason to like revisit this?
Madam Chair and Councilor Davis, yes, absolutely. I've been working with the Fire Marshal, Deputy Chief Romero, on making sure that actually implementing it right now, because as authority having jurisdiction, I think that this is in the best interest of both the community, the public, and for our fire department to have all businesses that we are going out there today and inspecting, to basically have them give them this QR code and say, we are requiring you to fill out this information. The minimum would be a point of contact, your name, email address, and a point of contact, sprinkler system, who your alarm system is with. Again, getting that vital information to get a hold of you in case something does happen. So again, we're already starting that with the business community as we speak.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Romero, and also Chief Jean Gallegos. When I first saw this touring the Fire Marshal's office through First Due, it was really exciting. And like you said, you only update as fast as really Google can. And I understand the situation. So hopefully once the big satellite company that's coming to Albuquerque, maybe they can help out in that regard. I am interested, as even we were doing some outreach with even ATD on active shooter drills in our community, and how even First Due or Community Connect can really help that in terms of just planning and talking about, if there, heaven forbid, that there is an active shooter at a business, that individuals who are sheltering in place know exactly where they are. And that's why it's so important to kind of partner up and do this outreach to encourage businesses to participate. But my question is, how many have enrolled, whether it's old businesses, new businesses, how many have participated in the program so far, and kind of what the goal is to get more people to participate?
Madam Chair, councilors, so right now the program just went live August 1st. So there's I'm going to say there's a couple dozen, if that, right now. Again, the more inspections we do, the more participation will be mandatory. Again, it's getting also the regular citizen living in the residential homes to participate as well. So again, us getting out and passing the word as any place that we could. That's Summerfest, that's Balloon Fiesta, that's the state fair, hopefully COVID doesn't slow any of this down. I hope that we can continue to, interact with the public and get their buy-in on this program, because I think it will really benefit them as well as us.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that, Chief. And so one question I had, and I love that you can really put in additional information such as language access. As a big supporter of that and really coming across many of our communities and their needs when it comes to language access, if someone is in need of a particular language, Vietnamese, and first responders go to the house, is their ability to actually know beforehand so that, what language access pieces do our first responder and fire have to also help address that need?
So in my opinion, Madam Chair, City Council members, with that being said, I think sometimes depending on the emergency, it may be difficult to know that prior to. Now, if you were en route, that may be a little too late. I know language lines and things are available through 911, through dispatch, where we have some type of, in terms of need for, speaking another language. It may be challenging to know that prior to. If it's a business maybe that required that and we came across that via inspection or doing one of the pre-incident plans maybe, but I think it might be a little challenging to see that and maybe have resources readily available, but maybe it's something that I could see en route to that call, and get maybe those resources en route or get someone on the line that can answer those questions. I just want you guys to know that this isn't gonna impede in terms of like our response. I mean, that's the most important piece when someone calls 911, getting someone there as fast and safe as possible. And, this will be secondary to making sure we're getting there as fast as possible and safely. But this is also that added tool that, it's going to take a little time, during that response time to look up. But I think those are, things that we can look into to see, how can we be better at knowing maybe that there's a language barrier or something like that prior to.
Well, thank you. I look forward to more partnerships in that regard as well. We'll certainly love to do whatever outreach we can to our communities, just so that they know that this is out there for our community. Even being on a ride along, we were trying to respond to an apartment complex, but it was just all over the place in terms of building numbers, letters, and just seeing that benefit already, whether it's either fire rescue or even APD or our county. So I just want to say thank you so much for presenting this, and however we can push this for public outreach so that more people can participate. I would love to help encourage that. And I know that you also have another presentation in terms of the 4th of July efforts. So I'll let you move on to that unless other counselors have any questions or comments. All right, we'll move on to 4th of July then.
All right, Madam Chair and council members. So our 4th of July. So this year's 4th of July, again, so I'm glad that it's over. So we did have a good 4th of July. Everything went off as far as all of the events. And so as we all know, that the 4th of July fireworks are a very contentious issue. Again, we have 50% of the community that, again, absolutely loves fireworks. And then we have that other 50% that are just, please stop, this is not fun. And so, we have people on both sides of the fence as far as how fireworks go. So going over the rules as far as fireworks go, the state of New Mexico governs fireworks, and licensing and safety acts is what governs us at the city of Albuquerque. So the way that the state's statute is written, it allows the authority having jurisdiction to regulate the use, a limited regulation, the use of aerial and ground audible devices. That's the only thing that it allows us to govern, which is those, responding to all of the calls. Those are the ones that we are mainly concerned about, is those large fireworks that's you can't control where the fallouts, which is, all the sparkly things coming down on everybody's houses and trees, you can't control where that's going to fall and what fires those are going to start. So based on the authority that's given to us by the state's regulations, City of Albuquerque prohibits the possession, sale, and use of all aerial and ground firework devices within the city limits. So every single fire stand in the city of Albuquerque is inspected and possesses a permit from the fire marshal's office. So none of them can sell illegal fireworks at all. Bernalillo County is the same way. So any fireworks stand in the city of Albuquerque or Bernalillo County are on the same page. We do not allow aerial or ground audible devices. And when I say ground audible devices, it's those M80s, those very, very loud fireworks. Those are the ones that are not allowed in the city limits or city count or the county. It's, again, that's about the only thing that's we're allowed to govern. So going over again, making it simple is can and cannot use. Again, warning on the fire work on each individual package. It's either going to say warning or caution. That's what our inspectors look at, and all of them in the city of Albuquerque only say caution. Now, if there's a big package that you buy with 20 fireworks in them, that package in its entirety is going to say warning on it. It's the individual packing of each firework that says caution. So again, it's just because of the way that's the amount of powder that's inside the box that makes them put warning on the label. But again, those are still legal fireworks. So again, it's a little confusing, but again, just look at the individual package and it'll either say warning or caution depending on if it's legal or illegal. So again, going on right here, no is these big, beautiful ones that are in the sky. All of those are illegal. And then the extremely loud ones like the M80s, those are illegal. The other ones, the cones, the sparklers, the little flicker sparklers, ground spinners, those are legal fireworks in the city of Albuquerque. So again, and most of the calls that we respond on are the ones that are that are illegal. And I'm going to say that 99% of them that we respond on are illegal fireworks. So some of the reports for illegal fireworks this year, I want to say thank you so much to 311. Again, they stepped it up this year. They, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, they were on call and taking calls until midnight every single night. So again, they answered a lot of calls. They pushed them our way so that we can do our best to manage them. And if you could see the numbers here, in 2019, again, the numbers are not as, they're, again, not even half of what they were in 2020. 2020's year was a very abnormal year for everybody. That's just the COVID year that everybody wishes that they could just forget, right? So including us, because as you can see, the call volume that we took that year, 7,000 calls last year compared to this year where we only took 3,700. Again, the calls were less than half, and it showed because we were not responding to as many firework calls as we were the year before. So as far as our firework enforcement units that night on the July 3rd and 4th, the calls that are, again, the firework enforcement units, and again, thanking APD. Again, APD is, as we know, they're working hard right now with very few members, and they still were able to give us staff and support my fire marshal's office personnel. And they teamed up one APD officer and one fire marshal officer. And what we would do is with the 311 system and the app that you were putting your concerns in on, we would map it and we'd find out where the most concentrated amount of complaints were or concerns of illegal fireworks, and we would dispatch the unit to that location. So last year, again, we responded to 97. This year, we responded to 68. Cease and desist orders issued. We issued last year 55. This year, there were 29. And seized illegal fireworks. Estimated costs last year were about $20,000 in fireworks that we seized, $15,000 this year. Again, looking at per capita this year, we did seize, a significant amount more of per capita as far as whenever we arrived on scene and took those fireworks. As you know, I don't know if any of you have bought those fireworks, but even the legal fireworks are expensive. So the illegal ones that they're buying in Moriarty and the counties that are not on the same page as us, because the only way that we could stop the sale of the aerial and audible devices is if the state would ban all fireworks in the state of New Mexico. And even at that point, the governor would have to come to an agreement with the reservations and the tribal leaders and come to an agreement with them so that they don't sell the illegal fireworks either. So again, that's a monumental task because they do make a lot of their revenue from fireworks sales. So it's something that's, again, we've looked into many years. I mean, this is an issue that's been going on since I've been in the department for over 2 decades. So, and it's something that's, I don't know what's we're gonna do to slow it down. Again, besides continue to educate. I think last year from the amounts that's of calls that we took compared to this year, again, we went out this year and we did a lot of kind of education and prevention, or try to anyway, as far as educating the public on what is legal and illegal. So going back a little bit, this is hot spots throughout the community. I live in this little area right here, Councilor Sena's district right here, that's really dark. I mean, that's my neighborhood. And I mean, personally, about a month ago, I went out because there were people lighting off bottle rockets. And I was like, I'm gonna go do what I'm asking the community to do as far as identify the exact location of where the firework is coming from, so that they can, the fire marshal's office could send a cease and desist letter or go do a knock and talk. And again, I was out for about 30 minutes and they lit off bottle rockets, probably one every 5 to 10 minutes. And it was very difficult for me to locate exactly where that bottle rocket's coming from. So again, it's a difficult task to, again, get the community to work with us on identifying these problem locations and addresses of where the fireworks or the illegal fireworks are being shot off from. And, you know, it's even harder for our fire trucks. Whenever we used to send fire trucks out to these firework calls, again, once a big red truck with lights and sirens are coming down the road, people tend to stop and put away all their illegal fireworks. And then we drive around the neighborhood and then we're like, we don't know what else to do. And we take our, you know, we clear the call. So again, that's why we're trying to set up different avenues in order to educate the public and to get the public help, and then go talk to those addresses where the illegal fireworks are being lit off. So some of the education and enforcement, as you can see on the left is our cease and desist letters. We have multiple ones, but there's reported use of illegal fireworks. So if they use the 311 app, and if we have multiple complaints about a certain address, we'll send this address a cease and desist letter saying that your address is coming up as using illegal fireworks. And if it continues, then, and if we find that you are using illegal fireworks, then it could be up to a $500 fine or 90 days in jail. On the right is some of the informational document that we go out and we sent or gave out to neighbors and to areas that we saw hot spots from last year. Again, that's where we went out and just reaching out to the community going, hey, here's what's illegal, here's what's legal, please help us out, please understand that there's members in your community that these fireworks truly affect. So please be considerate about that. We did do multiple press conferences, radio shows, social media blasts, news interviews against the cease and desist letters, community involvement as far as them giving us the information on 311, tracking 311, and then performing knock and talks. Myself and Deputy Chief Romero actually went out at least to over a dozen houses and talked to different members of the community that were reported to be using illegal fireworks. And again, this does two things. This educates them, and two, it lets them know that they're on our radar. That's, you know what, they now we're watching them, and we have it documented that we in person talked to them and told them that it's illegal to use these types of fireworks in the city of Albuquerque. So I mean, we've gotten a lot of calls back from the community, and from the areas where we did these knock and talks, and they thanked us because the fireworks did stop. So again, that's again, I'm truly happy about that, and hopefully we can continue to do that. So some of the call volumes as far as the night of the 4th through the 5th, structure fires, again, I'm so grateful that the monsoon season came early and it started raining a lot sooner than we were expecting, and got a lot of moisture. But structure fires, we had 1 this year compared to last year we had 11. Outside fires, 65 last year. We only have 25 this year. Other responses, which be EMS or car accidents, those did increase that night, which 342 compared to 292 from last year. Total responses, which is still a busy night for Albuquerque Fire Rescue, which we're usually in the low 200s per day. This year, 368 compared to last year, 370. So again, still an extremely busy year for Albuquerque Fire Rescue on the 4th of July. It's probably it is our busiest nights of the year. And at that point, if you have any questions for us, again, these are some of the signs that I'm like, we're showing some of the neighborhoods to put up in their neighborhood to encourage their neighbors to be considerate and to understand that there are other members in their community that's, you know what, they don't like fireworks, and to please understand that. So, any questions at this time?
If there's any questions, Councilor Benton.
Thank you. I guess for either of you, I noticed a type of firework in my own neighborhood that I hadn't really heard before. And I emphasize here because it's not aerial, but it is something that sounds like truly a blast, you know, extremely loud, way beyond an M80. And I'd heard some anecdotal descriptions of people making their own just noisemakers, but very loud noisemakers using gunpowder and I don't know what, a soda can or something like that. Have you encountered that? Do you know what this is? I did try to track it down one night, and I just kind of went out in my flip-flops and started trying to get to where it was coming from, and it was sounded like it was right in Old Town, which was really strange. But do you know what I'm talking about?
Madam Chair, Councilor Ben, I have not heard we have not gotten any reports of people making their own fireworks. I know that it's been done in the past, and we've responded to some fires that had a lot of material that they couldn't make their own fireworks, but we haven't had any reports of it. No, sir.
Yeah, not sure what it was, but it seemed even louder than a M80, louder than a gun, or at least a small caliber gun. But just curious. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Councilors, any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Chief Jean. I know that, I mean, just seeing that heat map in District 1 is very concerning. I know that many of my own constituents reached out. Some didn't exactly know where the address was, but as you were stating, it sounds like you kind of get a general sense of a concentration of calls for that area, and then you kind of do more pinpointing. I think for a while, and even some are sort of hearing them still, but feel a little disheartened in terms of reporting it if they don't know the specific address. So I guess my question is, if you don't know where maybe your neighbor 5 blocks away are shooting fireworks, you know, how can they still make that report, or should they continue to make those reports?
Madam Chair, yes, as I would advise them to continue to utilize the 311 system, and there's notes in there that you can put, you know, the general area, and just put a note in there of, you know, it's not coming from my house, but it's coming from this general area. And that actually creates a heat map for us to continue to observe that area. And our dispatch center does actually have another screen. So each of them have about 5-6 screens, if you've been up into the dispatch center, that the heat map every 5 minutes, it refreshes. So if they see a hot spot pop up on their screen, they will dispatch a unit to that location to go out there and observe the area and see if they can locate where the fireworks are coming from. So it's just, you know, it's just hard for us to send out emergency apparatus on 1 or 2 reports of an illegal firework, because then they're kind of chasing ghosts. It's kind of like trying to find somebody that's around a couple red lights, you're never going to find them, and it just puts a unit out of service for a potential emergency event that happens, say a heart attack or stroke or something just down the street, where now this unit is not available to take that call.
Right. No, I do appreciate that. And I know just the efforts that you all made over the 4th of July and continue to do so, as I know some people are still shooting over their leftover fireworks. But I just want to say thank you, not just for this presentation on the efforts of 4th of July, but also for the First View and Community Connect, and appreciate it.
Madam Chair, councilors, thank you so much for your time. Again, we're here to help in any way we can.
All right, thank you. Next, I know it's not presently on the agenda, and as we're gearing up, it looks like we do have an individual that was signed up for public comment and has joined us. So with that, I'm going to go over some of the ground rules for the individual that did join for public comment before we let them proceed. So comments are going to be addressed to the committee members only, and please keep your comments germane to the topic of today's meeting. Any disruptive conduct or non-germane commentary will result in removal from the Zoom meeting room. And I will also ask that we remain respectful of one another. And there will be a 2-minute time limit. The timer will start once you begin speaking. Then the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, will let you know when your time is up. So Mr. Moya, if you can have him join us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Harold Halmerson, please feel free to begin your comments, and your time will begin when you start speaking. Harold, are you there? Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not used to how this behaves.
No problem. Please proceed.
Let me check to see if the topic is okay. I'm commenting on a problem with 911, a non-response, a non-answer. Is that appropriate here?
Was it related to anything in regards to the fire marshal's office or fire?
Well, okay. It did involve the fire department. So on July 26th at around 9 o'clock, my downstairs neighbor, Barbara, knocked on my door. She had called 911. There was no response. Impulsively, I also called 911. And then I said, I can drive down to the fire station. So I did that. And during that entire time, I was on hold with 911. They were telling me not to hang up. I got to the station, pounded on the door, learned that one can't summon an ambulance that way, that one has to call the dispatch center. And one of the 4 firemen came out and one called. And I was given a phone number and I hung up on 911 to make that call. And then promptly 911 did call me and I started giving the information. And then the call was dropped and then they called again. And we finally got an ambulance dispatched. This is the 3rd time this sort of thing has happened, where the call was not answered. I'm not talking about reaching someone and then there's a delay in the response. There's no answer. Long ago, I spoke to the 911 manager at the time. I forgot who that person is, and we talked about the need for more personnel. And I said I'd be willing to testify to the city council about this. So I had that in mind. I noticed I could do that last night and I signed up. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Sir, I just want to state that I do apologize for, and I do hope that your neighbor is okay at this point. I know that we do have a few here that could address some of those concerns, but I just want to note that is pretty troubling to hear, that if this is the third time that has occurred where your call was not answered, and what protocols could be addressed to remedy some of what may have happened when either you went to the fire stations for assistance. I just had a few questions to you, sir, that you said this call occurred in July 26th.
Yes.
I would love to follow up with you after this committee meeting. If
Yes.
you could please either call our office as well as email me to get specific details of this incident, as well as the other incidents that did occur. Looks like our fire chief is also willing to respond. So Chief Gallegos.
Madam Chair, Mr. Harold, yeah, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Please, we would love to communicate with you and get the details of this incident and figure out what went wrong. Again, the only way that we could improve our system is finding out where those imperfections are and how we can make them even better. And again, I don't know all of the details of what you just now told us, but again, I would love to get more details and find out the specific date, time, incidents, when it was dispatched, when your initial call came in, and find out where the call was dropped, because that's not something that's that we want to hear about. We want to fix it, and we want to make sure that's we're here for you and for the public. And so, I mean, answering 911 calls and responding to your emergency is what we're here for. So please, if we can communicate through City Council and get his point of contact, and that we can gather more information so that we can make sure that this does not happen again.
Who should I communicate with? I sent something to the Civilian Police Advisory Administration, but I forgot to include the time and my phone number, so they said they couldn't do anything.
Sir, if you could actually reach out to my office,
Okay.
you can email me at landsenna@cabq.gov. You can also call the City Council front desk. You can leave your contact information, and we can also reach out to you in that way. We also have someone from the mayor's conference room, and then I'll go to Councilor Borrego.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Isaac, but yeah, I work for Mayor Keller. If you want, you can give me a call too. My number is 505-717-5315. So it's 505-717-5315. And we can work with the council staff, with the fire department, the police department. We can figure out what happened. Thank you.
Councilor Borrego, and then we have the APD's chief's office as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the public. Sir, I am very disturbed by what you've just stated. I'm the council president, and I'm not on this committee. So while I'm not on this committee, I'm here to listen, and absolutely would love to have you email my office so that I could ensure that we follow up on this. It's Cynthia Borrego, BORREGO @cabq.gov. And I would like to ensure that your issue is addressed.
Thank you.
It looks like APD's chief's office.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Commander Barker with APD, and I just wanted to reiterate what the fire chief said, that we are always looking at ways to improve and make things better, and we would like to know the details of this call so that we can address it from our department as well. Sir, you're welcome to email me at cbarker at capq.gov, and I will follow up on this as well.
Thank you.
So it sounds like we were given quite a few email addresses and contact information. I can always have staff follow up with you to get your information. That way we can ensure that everyone's connected and looped into the same email that you may send. That way you're not trying to write down so many emails and phone numbers. But I'll make sure that for those that made comment today, to follow up with you to ensure that we get the clear picture of what occurred on that day. So we'll have staff also follow up with you for your contact information. I know that we did receive information when you signed up for public comment. Is that a good way to reach out to you, sir, is what you provided for public comment today?
Yes.
All right, we will be sure to do so and loop everyone in from both our fire, APD, and Councilor Borrego's, as well as my office and the mayor's office as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on. I know it's not on the agenda, but we do have updates from our Albuquerque Community Safety Department. I know that Director Ruiz Angel is here to provide some of those updates. Thank you for your patience. And I believe the presentation was also emailed out to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair and City Council. Nice to see everybody again. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Quickly. I feel like we'd stopped using Zoom for a while, and now I'm back to feeling out of my element. Okay. Okay, great. So back again, we have been very busy bees working the last few months on really getting this right and getting ready to launch. So again, right response at the right time. We are stopping this is a new department. We're just going to start saying we are part of the third branch of public safety system. So we are moving past the being new, we are in. Again, we are sending trained professionals to non-violent, non-medical 911 calls for service involving mental health, addiction, homelessness, and things that also don't include mental health issues like abandoned vehicles and needle pickups. We have, like I said, we've been very busy. So if you were part of our first presentation, I think our org chart was like 5 little boxes, and now we're getting much bigger. So as you can see, we've added some positions in the administration side. We're filling our positions heavily on the mental community side, behavioral health responders. So I wanted to kind of add here so that you could see total number of positions. We're not having a hard time filling our behavioral health responder positions. We had a number of individuals who really wanted to be a part of this. And so we just haven't had a hard time recruiting very much. So we're very happy about that. And we know that that might not be sustainable. So we still want to put ourselves out there, and we're still working with our universities and our workforce solutions to make sure that we get our name out there, because we want to start making sure that people are ready for our next cohort of responders. We also have a few vacant positions. So if you know anybody who's wanting to be a part of an innovative department, please send them our way. As you've known, we have 4 different types of responders. We hired our mobile crisis team, which is like our high acuity licensed clinicians. They're paired with a police officer. That program has been fantastic. And I think we're now in a place where there's a good pattern happening. And so we're reevaluating in some ways to kind of figure out how do we build capacity, because it's a model that really works well. How do we then also start to look at data in a way that allows us to understand what the need is from potentially the system. And so I can share some of those numbers with you on the mobile crisis team, but it's a small team of 4 for the city, and then the county has 4 as well. And so we're really proud of, that's one of our smaller programs, but it's one that we're really happy that we brought in-house. This was originally with HopeWorks, and it's been fantastic. We're just really, really happy with the types of responders that we got and the alignment that we've had with our police department. Our next one's our behavioral health responder, and this is the one that we've just started. We've been hiring for. A lot of our folks are stuck in the HR world, as you know, can be intense at times. And so, but we're pretty much at full capacity, ready to start those. And I think everybody will be trained and ready to go by the end of October for those positions. These will be people, non-police, and they'll go out in pairs of 2. And those will be very specific to mental health issues, some homelessness, inebriation, addiction, but really we're looking at that mental behavioral health components. Now the third one is that originally, and you'll see the name change, was what we had called an emergency community responder, and this was an individual or responder who would be going out to what we would see like down and out calls, right? And is additionally for abandoned vehicles. And so we decided to take out the emergency because we really felt that emergency kind of stuff really needed to stay within the fire department, along with some PD, right? So we didn't want to necessarily be emergency. So we've kept it to community responder, and we're still kind of playing with the name. This position will be a classified position in which we're working to with class and comp to get this done. But this position should be posted hopefully very soon, and we'll hopefully get be able to fill these positions quickly. And then our last one is our street outreach and resource coordinator positions. There's 2 individuals so far. And these will be pretty much in alignment with family and community services, encampment team that they have. I think they're called outreach teams or something. And this is really going to be that first piece. So for these kind of lower one-off type of camps that we see, or folks experiencing homelessness, we want to make sure that we can get to them quickly, while the solid waste and the encampment teams can really focus on some of these larger camps that we know can have a lot of different components and safety components to them. So we're going to try to go in there sooner and be able to get some of this done quickly, and hopefully prep them to be able to, hopefully be able to move them to an actual location versus just moving them to moving their camp out of the way, but actually getting them help. We are still working diligently with our planning committee. I think this month we had to push out the meeting a little bit. And this is actually, we've hired a couple people from here. So we're very fortunate that some of our actual community people who were involved that were experts have been like, "I'll love to go work for ACS." So we're gonna expand this planning committee. We'd like to expand it out to the public and invite additional folks who we think really need to be involved in understanding where ACS is at, and hopefully helping us figure out what the future looks like as we streamline our processes, and as we can hopefully even bolster their nonprofits so that we can really have places to refer people. Right now, our first cohort is in training. This feels very large. It is a lot of training, but we've put it out so that it's done within 60 days. You can see here that the 30 days are really critical. And then we have a whole series of others that are just as important. And then they kind of get down into like the 60 days. And it's really just to help people space out and not feel too overwhelmed. Additionally, we were able to create CEUs. So these are all given credit for our licensed clinicians so that they're able to maintain their licenses, which is a really fantastic way to give benefit, right, and reward for working with the city, because CEUs can be expensive and you have to pay for them yourself. So we did decide that we were going to make these all, and we had them certified so that they were ready they could get that credit. So now we get into like the nitty gritty of how it works. So what we have decided on is that we would have 911 be the qualifier. So initially, I know we talked early on that we wanted to potentially do maybe a separate line, but with 988 as the national crisis line rolling out in 2022, we really felt that was we didn't want to create a number for ACS and then try to create streamline it to 988 the next year. So the education there just felt like it would be not a good use of our time. So we decided that we're going to try it the 911 route, which we know can be hard for some community who don't feel comfortable calling 911, but there'll be other ways to send to potentially get resources to them. So we are, though, for anyone who calls 911, we're going to have our 911 dispatch team qualify the call. It will then get sent to our AFR dispatch team, who will then actually do the dispatching. They won't requalify it unless there's a medical need. But even then, at that point, they will dispatch ACS and be the ones that stay on the line with us until we are able to then end the call. So that's the kind of route that you'll see through the dispatch process. Additionally, we've decided to create new ACS codes. We thought that was really important for multiple reasons. One, it was distinguishable from APD's 10 code and AFR's codes, but it also allows for us to collect data in a way that will be really helpful for us as we start to want to start doing reports. So as you can see here, this is how we've kind of created our codes in regards to call types, how we prioritize them, because we do have lots of calls that come through. We want to make sure that our responders are able to prioritize those calls. And then you'll see here in the green kind of color is our 311 tickets, which we'll also be handling. This is a very ambitious goal. It ends up being about 3,000 to 3,500 calls if all of those calls historically were to come to us. Now, that's potentially not going to happen based on this type of situation, based on safety issues, and based on our capacity. We have to consider all those pieces, but we really felt that this was the types of calls that we really wanted to start with. And these are all just for those that, right, these are all level 4s and 5s. So this does not include 1s, 2s, and 3s, since, in the public safety dispatch world. So just so that it's very low acuity calls that we're just going to really try to see if we can pull those and relieve some of that, some of those 4s and 5s from police. And then lastly, we have kind of our timeline that we've been really trying to stay on point with. This kind of gives your June, right? You guys have seen different versions of this, but we have our June and through January that we did, and then we brought in our phase, right? Our phase 2 was really our mobile crisis team. And as you can see, we're phasing into 3, which is our behavioral health responders. And hopefully with our new community responders, we'll be ready to be 24/7 by the end of the year. That is the aspiration. And then I think that leaves us as a last thank you. So I'll open it up for questions. I'm sure there's lots. I wanted to kind of make it brief though for you guys.
Counselors, any questions? Wow, I'm surprised. Counselor Davis, did you have a question or you're just coming?
I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. And Director, thank you, Madam Chair and Director. Thanks so much. I'm just sort of curious about the nuts and the bolts a little bit, and I know we'll have time to catch up on this another day. But for the new responders that you're training and sending out, I'm a little curious how are those how are their work schedules, or how are their assignments done? Do you anticipate that they'll be assigned to like a neighborhood on a regular basis where they get to know the regulars sort of, or is it more of a citywide so they get a taste of the different challenges across the city? How do you anticipate that will happen?
Sure. And Julian, I can't find my little thing. So if you want to stop my sharing, I'm having a hard time finding my little icon, but Counselor Davis, we definitely have, we want to definitely try to do some predispositioning. We had originally thought that the need was really going to be around Singing Arrow area on right Central and Tram all the way down to downtown and down into the South Valley. However, we don't know what this is going to look like. We could get all the calls. We could be completely overwhelmed. We could also be doing a lot of outreach based on having to do testing. And so we did decide that we would really try to concentrate in certain areas, but still be available for other areas. What we don't want to get into, and this is where as we grow, we'll be able to, is what we don't want to do is have a call come through right in the International District and we're stuck way up on the west side. So we're gonna have to, but we also don't want to be sitting around waiting for calls to come through when we really could be out there trying to do citywide. Our mobile crisis team is set up through a citywide model. And again, they take a lot less calls because their acuity are so high. But I think we're going to try it citywide. If we start to see that we're just completely bombarded and we're seeing that it's just too much, we might just stick to a couple areas. And those will be determined based on heat maps and the need that we need to have support for police and fire.
Thanks so much.
Counselors, any other questions before I ask my own? And Director, thank you for your presentation. I think just one question that I had was, I know on the timeline it said kind of an interim location, kind of a home base, but from my understanding, really it's kind of a mobile outreach. Have vans already been deployed? Are they being outfitted? You know, what's that looking like so far?
We are, and I didn't even put the picture. We love it. We received our van. Thank you for bringing that up. We received a mid. It's a van that's not like a, you know, lots of chairs. It's got more of a feel of what we're hoping to create is like an actual setting in which we can pull somebody out from out of the elements, right? Hot, cold, and actually be able to try to sit down with them in a much more relaxed environment inside. So there's a lot of space inside the van, and in the back it's completely retrofitted to have supplies that are needed out in the field. So that is going to be one piece, and we'll probably have that van available for anybody, but really it's going to be for our encampment outreach teams. And then, yes, I mean, our model is very similar to police in the sense that we would like to have, we're hubbed right now at City Hall, down on the first floor where the Water Authority space is at, which is actually really cool. And we get a lot of visitors, people who are looking for different places in City Hall, which, you know, we love meeting people and getting to know. But we also get a lot of those residents who live downtown, our houseless residents that live downtown. And so we've actually even had some already great interaction and connection with those folks. So it hasn't been a horrible thing. We are hoping though that with the GEO bond, we can get the Catherine San Mateo location that we're still really, really anxious to be able to get into, because I think that'll be a really a different environment than City Hall. But yeah, in the meantime, everyone's going to be out in the field. We have been working with AFR and APD and a lot of our different centers to find locations where people can do bio breaks and check emails and have lunch. But the reality is, I think we wanted to be out in the field as much as possible. And so the shifts will, right, that's 8 to 5, 5 days a week. We did not choose to do the 410s just because we're just not at that place where we can afford to do that. We wanted to have full coverage as much as we could. So yeah, you know, it's an 8-hour shift. Well, it'll allow for bathroom breaks as needed. It'll allow for also codes so that if they want to go to a community meeting, right, because they're requested, they can be pulled out to go to that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I think that's the model, and hopefully we'll have a larger hub in the near future.
Well, definitely looking forward to that, and also seeing this in motion and in practice. So I think also the community is looking forward to that as well. Councilors, any other questions? Oh, Councilor Benson.
Hi, thank you. And Madam Director, thanks for the presentation. It seems like great work you're doing. I had a specific question with regard to the street outreach team. So you're working with Sebastian and the folks that are dealing with the encampments, or kind of like when they're, I guess you're planning to be out there when they're out there making contact with people. How about outside of Family Community Services, how about the other nonprofits, you know, who are doing outreach like Albuquerque Street Connect or some of those folks? Would you be coordinating with them as well? I mean, or is that a different kind of street outreach?
No, thank you for the question, Councilor Benton. Yes, so we actually have engaged with partners who I think have pulled back a little bit due to lots of COVID, right? The model wasn't the same for the family and community, and ours actually matches. So we have reached out to kind of figure out, one, can we contract? Because that's part of it, is we wanted to bolster community. But two, let's do it together. Like let's really join forces and make sure that we aren't being redundant or double dipping into areas, right? So yes, we're very excited, and we have two positions, what doesn't seem like a lot, but because the model does match the different types of, and we actually hired, I think two of our newest responders actually one came from First Nation, the other came from Hope Works, and they both did street outreach. So they're really, really well connected. They already have folks, like they're ready to jump into action in regards to making those connections, collaborating in a way that, I think we've done in the past, but really we hope we could elevate. So yes, we will be definitely working with our nonprofits and have already even started some contracts with some of them to do very specific work for us, and then pay them for their training, because a lot of them are going to come in and help us do some training as well.
And how do you anticipate, we've had a lot of discussions about this with the coordinating council, that, as we all know, it's a broad spectrum of people who are unhoused, but many of them are fearful of established options, like the emergency shelter, or even like some of them, even though we're talking about possibly doing safe outdoor spaces or sanctioned encampments and those things, that there's a hard, I don't want to call it hardcore, that sounds like bad stuff, but there's a severely affected group of folks who are on the street, who are completely mistrusting of all, anything organized, anything where there might be some rules, or they would be asked to do something that they don't want to do, or that there's and oftentimes for good reason they're afraid of that. I don't know. I'm kind of just musing here, but I mean, where's the pipeline? I mean, where's the back door? If we break up an encampment and we make contact with individuals, are there places? Are we confident we have an assortment of options for those folks as to where we could house them, and as we know, it's very difficult when people are unhoused to keep track of them and get them other services like addiction recovery or mental health services.
Councilor Ben, this is the question I think a lot of us ask ourselves, including family and community. We just had this conversation this morning because it is difficult. And what's worse is that sometimes you end up, it's never about necessarily the diagnoses. It's sometimes about the day, that maybe you'll be showing the psychosis of your diagnosis. And so a lot of, I'm working with a couple clients now who we've seen the situation where they've been kicked out because of behavioral health issues. And then a week later they're fine. And so, how long do we suspend their services and are we just supposed to leave them out in the parks? So what we have found is that, and this is just from even having our responders for the last week, literally, what we found is that almost like if you know the system and the folks, a lot of times we've just been able, for those very vulnerable folks, we've been able to say, hey, look, this is this is the situation today, right? We know that last week they may have had problems, but today we know that this is where they're at. And, can we give them the second chance, or can we find that place where we can meet them? Maybe they don't need to be in general population with these groups. How do we then try to do that? Because if we don't, I just think we're ultimately just giving up on some of our most vulnerable community members, really, when we're talking about restrictions. And it's hard, some of the places you're talking about, we know that, sometimes they want you to do certain chores, or they want you to contribute to maybe some sort of ecosystem within their shelter. And that's like a step higher than what I think you're actually talking about. But, sometimes it's not the right fit for that individual, and the mistrust with shelters and hotels, it's there, and it's hard to break down. And sometimes people are just better in their cars. They've said it. I function better when I'm by myself. So I wish I had the greater solution, but what I can say that ACS is doing is we are running down the options, right? Someone says we kicked him out 3 weeks ago, we go back and say, well, how long has he have to be suspended, and what can we do in the meantime? How do we get him in? What do we need to also, maybe it's a disciplinary issue. Maybe it's he has a temper or whatever. It could be something like that we've seen also, because they're agitated and they argue with the security on site. So maybe we need to get him some behavioral health classes. Maybe he just needs to have that so that we can better, keep him tempered and then potentially figure out a long-term location. But yeah, we can't just think of the house. We got to think about the entire situation. And some of these people have children, and it just is it's a very scary situation to think about. But yes, the best we can do at this point is really just run down our resources and figure out what we can do, and hopefully have hotel vouchers until we can get them into the right system.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I think we've got community-wide, we've got a deficit of options. And, I was a skeptic of the idea of sanctioned encampments, or safe outdoor spaces, as we're calling them now. But I see that we need a spectrum of housing options for a wide spectrum of people and diagnosis.
And we're seeing even borderline, I got a call from an actual employer out of the day that said, I hired this girl. She's fantastic. We're really excited about her, but we just found out she's living out of her car. And so we reached out to her, and we were able to, we connected her where we could, but she was like, I don't want to go to a shelter. She's like, I just feel that's just not for me. And there was lots of reasons. It could be all kinds of things: shame, fear. She didn't have any sort of behavioral health components in what traditional way that we think. And so, she said, I'm going to live in my house. But what we did find out, she's never had case management. And what we found is that there was lots of trauma that got her to where she was at. And so we were able to connect her with the case manager, who may or may not be able to get her the immediate housing, but hopefully we'll get her on track so that we can get her into housing down the road while she's saving money.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, and thank you, Director, for the presentation and the updates. Really looking forward again to this in practice, and for our community as well. So thank you. We're going to move on to our next agenda item. Oh, Councilor Borrego. I know she's not a committee member, but I know that she's here for another item. But I did want to just recognize her because I do believe she did have a comment or question.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I do have a couple. Actually, I have two questions, and thank you, Director Ruiz-Angel, for the work you're doing. I'm really happy to hear your report today and see how far you guys have come. And I know it's a lot of work, and it's been a short amount of time, and we were pretty concerned in the beginning because it was moving slow. My question, two of my questions. One, just really quickly, how do you protect people's identity? Because I imagine you have to write reports, and you have to have, that sort of, record keeping. So I just wonder how you protect people's confidentiality. And then the second question that I have is with regard to, I guess probably at the end of the fiscal year, you'll have an analysis, maybe more general, of the kinds of cases that you've dealt with. Do you have somebody on staff that would be doing that analysis and doing that writing? And so those are the two. And I'm sorry, I'm not on this committee, but I'm here for something else. And this is just so intriguing to me.
Of course, thank you, Councilor Borrego. So to address the first question, protecting people's identities and personal information is extremely important for us, especially because we want to build the trust from a city government perspective. So all of our databases that we're using, everything is HIPAA compliant, so we can't break into it quickly. Our policies talk about not being able to share information, and we have very clear training, one on HIPAA, but two, on even just like when we're talking like this in a sense, right? We want to talk about the stories because it's good advocacy. It helps us build better programs. But additionally, it's a very small, I will give you an example. We had a very small, our first cohort was only like 7 people. And one of our responders walked in and had connected with one of our supervisors. And I just saw it. I saw the eye contact. I said, oh no. And lo and behold, the supervisor was like, I can't supervise this person down the road. Luckily, we didn't need that kind of supervision. She's like, I used to be their counselor like years ago. And I had to I said, I don't have to remind you, but I'm going to. I was like, any client, right? That was a client relationship. So you need to just keep that. That information is, make sure you're within HIPAA compliant. Do not talk about whatever history they had. So, so we're very, very strict on that. And we have policies around keeping people's information and then trainings that support that. And then the second question regarding, sorry, a lot went down. Yes, we have a data analyst that we are bringing on. Originally, we did decide to go with a lower level and then quickly realized we were going to need somebody with a little more capacity. So we are looking for somebody. If you guys are have any great prospects, please send them my way. But yes, we are hiring for a data analyst and a policy analyst very specifically because, right, part of our job is to collect good information and talk about good outcomes and what we're trying to achieve. But part of this is to help us hopefully really be a catalyst to some of the system changes that we know need to happen, right? So that we can really support long-term and a better system of care. So that's the hope, is that we want to make sure that those, that they work together so that we can really bring, lift voices and lift, be data driven in our decisions in the future.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging me. I think it's really important to having been a planner, to see that data at the end and to learn the lessons that we need to learn and to make the changes that we need to make based on the work that you're doing. So thank you for that.
And we're also happy to, I think one of the things we want to do is, as we start to collect our first month's data, is to just share it. And be transparent wherever it might be, right? Maybe it won't be the best numbers, but we got to start figuring out where do we need to change things, or where do we need to build capacity? Where do we need to do education? So, we're happy to send, even if we're not on the public safety meeting, we're also happy to send just general number updates as we start this journey.
All right, we're looking forward to that. Thank you. We're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is EC 397. It's the third supplemental agreement with Troy Luna DBA Comprehensive Counseling LLC. I move approval. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councilor Bassan, Benton, and Councilor Davis. Councilors, any questions or comments from staff on this one? Does not look like it. I do just want to add, I know that this is very important, especially considering even our officers at the Capitol and what counseling really means for APD. So I appreciate this coming down. So with that, Ms. Hinojos, will you call the roll call vote?
Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Sena.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next up, we have OC 36, the 2020 Civilian Police Oversight Agency, or CPOA, semi-annual report. And only for the purpose of moving the conversation, I will move a receipt be noted. Thank you, Councilor Bassan. Councilors, do you have any questions or comments? And who's here to present the report?
Councilor Chair, Honorable Councilors Ali Abbasi, I'm an analyst with the CPOA, and I'm joined with Ms. McDermott, who is our lead investigator. Director Edward Harness could not be here. He's on vacation today, so we're here on his behalf. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Okay, well, I have a few. And I will note that is it standard if the executive director is not available, who is it that would fall into his stead, his or her stead?
Chair Sena, I believe that's the lead investigator at the agency, Ms. McDermott.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Abbasi, for coming. I do have a few questions. Just in terms of the math, I know that it was reported that I believe 307 complaints were brought forward. 172 were actually given CPC numbers. 135 were not investigated. And of those that remained, 22 were closed. Is that correct?
Council Chair, that is correct.
So in reading the report of the 135 that were not investigated, I do understand, you know, certain parameters, but I do not, I guess, like how it was reported in terms of the 135, you know, either some were reported out to internal affairs, whether it was duplicated or not. And also just in general, as it's graphed from 172 and only having 22 closed out, that's a steep drop. So is it typically reported out as numbers that are actually being investigated through the CPC, or, you know, just how 135 just dropped off? We don't exactly make that evaluation, but really focus in on these 22. Can you clarify, you know, of that 135, why they weren't investigated, and of those, what was referred where?
Yes, absolutely, Council Chair. So for the 135, to answer your first question, those were the complaints that we recorded at the agency, the 307. So out of those, 172 were assigned CPC numbers, and the remaining 135 were not assigned because, like you mentioned, duplicative complaints, they were out of jurisdiction, because a lot of complainants, they don't know that we only investigate complaints against APD personnel. Sometimes they're seeking something else that we cannot accommodate. And then some complaints, they are resolved through informal mediation, and some are forwarded to area command. And the one that you talk about, 22 complaints that were closed, I defer to Ms. McDermott to answer that question. She's the lead investigator.
Yes, thank you, Chair Sena and councilors. So in terms of the number of difference, I'm understanding is what you're asking about, why the big drop. During the time frame that we're talking about, this reporting period being July 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, some factors that affected that was there were only 2 investigators during the significant portion of that time, having a large case volume. We had lost a couple of different employees, and so we were down to 2. There were 2 hires done towards the very end of the reporting period. And so one of the investigators, myself, spent a large portion of my time training those new hires so that they would be able to be effective and move on from their own to investigate things. We did have the summer protests that took a large portion of the to investigators' time during that reporting period. There were challenges directly related to COVID concerning processes and performing interviews, having the proper equipment and access to all the remote things that we needed to do the work. So there is also a backlog of cases that need to be entered into the system as closed. So there may be completed investigations, but they haven't actually been closed out in the system. So they're going to reflect obviously as open, even though they are completed. So that's why you'll see often when you look back, these numbers will shift and change because it's sort of a living thing as it goes on. So we definitely are appreciative of the staffing increases that council have recently voted through. That's going to certainly assist with the challenges that we've had in getting things more completed in more timely fashion. But that number is probably not 100% accurate, but it's just as accurate as we can provide at this time.
Okay, so, I'm trying to do the math here. So of the 307, 172 got CPC numbers, 135 weren't investigated for whatever reason. And I think those should be broken down for the next report period as just, what was actually referred out to the area commands, or if they were resolved through informal mediation. I think that's really pressing for our community to also know and understand. I know that was reported, that mediation, some were interested. I think it was like 67 were interested, but just didn't know about it. And I know it's just really in its initial process, but it's important that community knows about that. But if my math is right, of 172 minus 135, that's 37. And of the 37, only 22 were closed. So is that kind of what you were talking about, Ms. McDermott, about this being a live number, I guess? There's 15 that's kind of just, I don't know where they are to be tracked. Is that part of the backlog, or is this going to be enrolled into the next backlog of cases?
Probably the best answer I can provide, Madam Chair, is it's probably both. Without knowing the specifics of where each one was, but there's going to be some that have since been completed in investigative and will be rolled into the completed number for the following reporting period. There are some that have already been investigated and just need to be closed out. So it's a combination of different, they're going to fall in different categories is the best I can explain to you, is that some are still pending investigations, some have been completed but still pending to be closed. So it can fall in these different categories. And to the question that you were kind of asking about where these other cases are, I can certainly appreciate, and I'll make sure Director Harness is aware of your requests of breaking down those categories. We track the various complaints that come in, even if they're not technically complaints. People request a lot of different things. Some of them, as I said, are Analyst Abbasi said, they're out of area, things like that. Some are referred for mediation. Some of them are just strictly questions, and they really don't know what to do or who to talk to. And we provide those resources as best as we can. And we put them down as work basically that we're still doing. They're just for the community, but they're not cases that we're working. So we're trying to provide different resources and assistance and direct them in different ways, referring them to, if we get general complaints about APD or something of that nature where there's nothing specific to investigate, we refer those to area commands to be aware of. So it encompasses a large variety of things that we're just trying to serve the populace, but they don't, they're not actual complaints that we would investigate.
Yeah, I would love to follow up on some of that information. We receive complaints as well, right, from our constituents. We don't exactly refer them out to CPOA, of course, but we kind of just talk to our communities, talk to our area commands, just to see where that miscommunication didn't align. But it's just important to at least make these connections and know at least where the reports are going. Even earlier we heard from a gentleman who actually reached out to CPOA on this issue of 911 dispatch, just not knowing where to go. So it's important for, at least if there is a discontinuation of the general public of not knowing where their complaint should go, it's important, at least as for me, to understand and at least try to capture those so that we can refer them to the right information, like you were saying, and how important that is, that it doesn't always go to a level of a complaint that you should be investigating. So I do appreciate that. But my next question, I guess, is, what is currently, it's something that I think overall council deals with in getting these reports. And I understand just the situation and the nature of how these investigations play out, but also, like you said, just the staffing levels and hopefully council having supported additional investigators that should maybe make some, I guess, alleviation to those issues. But I'm curious, just of these backlogs, because I know in looking at how many requests were given to an extension beyond what the CASA is pressing for, which is right 120 days. Is there, how many cases are currently out there that are not resolved or at least closed? I mean, for me, it's also important, not just for us as a community to understand, but also for those officers who kind of also on edge waiting for that to be reported out. So I guess in anticipation for this next report out, are the numbers going to be as skewed as they are in this report?
Chair Senna, I don't have the answer for that at this time. Like I say, this was a little unexpected that we would be appearing in this capacity. So in terms of outstanding, I don't have a firm number for you. Again, that is something that I can pass on to the director, that you have interest in knowing this information and anticipating for the future report.
Okay, yeah, that's one of my concerns as well. I think overall, I might actually refer this either not be receipt be noted, so that some of these questions that I have be answered by the executive director the next time, or even deferring this out or pulling it into overall council, because I did have a question too. I know that even the last report out, certain council districts had a lot more complaints than others, and was curious because this report was a bit different. I'll utilize my own council district, whether it's the Northwest or the Southwest Area Command. If it's that officer that arrests them, but the use of force is not utilized until they are booked, where would that number or that complaint go towards? Would it be, where they're being booked at, in council district 2, or is it actually within council district 1 where the arrest occurred, but maybe the use of force did not occur?
So that would be where the incident occurred. That's how it would be reported. So if the incident occurred in District 6, but it started in District 2, so it will be reported as where the incident occurred, the use of force incident.
Is that often reported out as to maybe where it started and where the incident occurred, or just in general, just where the incident occurred?
Council Chair, that would be where the incident occurred. That's how it will be reported, but if you go into the case, it will identify all the details.
Okay. So, I have additional questions of just even the SOPs. So 7 of the SOPs were reviewed 12 times for 5 cases. And overall, just making evaluations of how many times SOPs are reviewed. Do we get more information as to if they were reviewed, what adjustments were suggested in those cases, or is it per case? Is it specific?
Chair Senna, if I may. So each case, the investigator evaluates what standard operating procedures are appropriate in that particular situation. And so if recommendations need to be made about policy issues, then those are forwarded to the subcommittee of the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board to recommend possible policy changes. If the policy itself is not the issue, then it is possibly either a training issue or it's a personnel issue. And so of course the personnel issue is identified through the sustained complaint and whatever discipline might be appropriate. If it's a training issue, then again, if the investigator feels that's what the cause is, that information is provided to the department via our report for possible training issues that the department can then take up and realize that there's some deficiency there. So we make those recommendations based on whatever the facts are of that specific complaint or specific case.
Okay. So does that then go before the board, at least in terms of policy adjustments that are needed, or no?
Yes, the policy, like I said, anything with the policy, if we see a deficiency in the policy or a modification that's needed to happen with the wording or a lack of a policy, any of those types of things, we will alert the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board through their subcommittee, usually sending a memo saying, hey, we observed this particular issue in this case and recommend that you take this up as a possible policy recommendation.
Okay. So my next question is really into the demographics of the complaints. I know that there was actually a lot of missing information, and that was actually kind of where it piqued my interest, where, it's part of the process, part of CASA, and why we're in this, and why it's so important to understand some of the information. And yet I know that only 6 complaints were done anonymously. And so more people were willing to provide more information. But when it came to more specifics, whether it was their sexual orientation, which was the biggest kind of carve out where people did not want to report out, or whether it was their race or maybe their mental health status or their housing status, I'm just curious what efforts, in terms of explanation, is given why we're really pressing and asking for this information and why it's important. I know it's, even in reading through the report in terms of how the complaints were filed, it's hard when it's just a form and just asking and people just skipping that question, but really pressing when the person's making that complaint why it is important to collect this information and why it's necessary. Are efforts like that done?
Chair Senna, yes, the form does say that we would request these demographics, that it is optional for the purposes of the department just of collecting information. However, when we have an opportunity to actually speak with the complainants, we do ask, especially if the admin staff is intaking the complaint, we do ask that they fill this information out. We explain to them that it is strictly for the purposes of trying to make sure that someone isn't being the bias-based policing isn't occurring due to their particular condition or status or whatever it may be. But we do unfortunately have several citizens who just say, I don't want to fill that information out. It's none of your business. We get a variety of responses to these questions and we do our best, but obviously we cannot force them to answer the question. And so we take with what we have.
Okay, so do you notice that complainants are more willing to share more information when it's done in person rather than on a form or online? Do you see any benefit of those that, maybe go to file a complaint in person?
Well, given the COVID year, of course, that's a little more difficult to assess. So there's that. But in general, I just anecdotally, I couldn't give you specific numbers, would say that no, I haven't seen a significant difference if one of the staff member get to actually engage and talk with the complainant. There's a few that cooperate, but I would say several still say that they don't want to, whether it's mistrust or they just don't want that information revealed. I couldn't answer that, but I'm sure some in-person or at least contact has some difference, but again, with COVID, it's a little hard for me to say because there hasn't been as much opportunity for that.
Okay. I'm just digging through my notes on the report, so you'll have to, forgive me for jumping around quite a lot. My next question, I know that it was recommended, it was urging council to implement an analysis-based percentage funding model. What was meant by that? I believe it's on page 50.
I'll defer that to Mr. Abbasi.
Council Chair, so you're talking about analysis-based.
Yeah, it stated that we urge the council to implement an analysis-based percentage funding model. What was meant by that?
So this was a letter that's been written out by the CPOA board to the city council during the September meeting. So I just copy pasted what was drafted in the letter. I picked that up and put it in the report. So, but I think it's that previously we were assigned a specific percentage. I'm not exactly sure, was it 0.5 or 1.5, some percentage of APD's budget goes to the CPOA. So the board was urging the councillor to look more into the requirements, the number of complaints, how many investigators we have, how many complaints we receive versus that, compared to how many APD personnels at internal affairs are investigating complaints, compared to how much are they receiving. So the way I read it, I believe that's what it meant.
And if I may, Chair Sena, the other point being is that the concern was that there should always be adequate funding. And so there was some thoughts of tying it as it was to a percentage versus a potential that underfunding might occur if there is no direction as to what a budget might look like down the road.
Okay. So as we talked about earlier, in terms of mediation and people wanting to know more about that process, how exactly was that delivered, and is that being conveyed to the public that that's an option?
Chair Sena, whenever complaints come in, they are evaluated first off as to whether or not mediation is appropriate. And then if that particular piece or that particular complaint is appropriate for mediation, they are referred to the Alternative Dispute Resolution Department. That department then reaches out to the citizen and explains the processes of what happens with the mediation process. So that is why with the form itself, we also ask for if they want mediation or don't want mediation, or need for more information. But of course, we are trying to follow the ordinance since the CASA has given that grant to us to attempt mediation first if it's appropriate.
And if I may add, so we are in a court stipulation that gave us, that allowed us to conduct mediation for a period of 1 year. So all the requirements of when and how we can conduct mediation are outlined in that joint stipulation. We cannot send out complaints that have allegations of misconduct and stuff like that. Complaints, there are 4 categories that are clearly identified. That include, we can only send out complaints that are related to communication, including rudeness, complaints that are regarding non-fatal vehicle crashes, if there are mistakes on police forms, or other similar less serious nature complaints, which are referred to as Class 7 violations and which are deemed appropriate by the executive director. So these are the only complaints that we can forward to ADR. And there are also certain office conditions related to officers, whether officers are eligible or not. So that's determined by executive director, and then those are sent out to ADR.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to the numbers again, because it's still just such a big discrepancy of 307 complaints that were filed, only 172 as was graphed, and yet only 22 were closed. Can you explain table 4 of the total 22? It says 14 cases, 4 out of the 14 cases were closed due to no jurisdiction. I guess I'm also curious what the exact number that's actually being evaluated or was presented. And then of that number, 22 were resolved. And there's still the 15 that may be backlogged into rolling into this next report that we may receive.
Council Chair, is it table 4 that you mentioned about the reason for admin closure? Is that?
Yeah, on page 20, there's the 14. I'm guessing that's of the 22. Is that correct?
That is correct. So these out of 22, 14 were closed administratively, and this is the list that tells why these cases were closed administratively.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that the pie chart kind of identifies the remaining of the 14 that was not administratively closed as to the reasons why, but there's still that 15 number, and I guess I'm more pressing on how it was reported. Just in itself, the graph historically, in 2017, we also saw 172, but yet 61 were closed. And I know each one's different, and just the time it may take and other considerations, and it's kind of a live number where it fluctuates and can roll into the next. It's just hard for me to come back to my constituents and say that, 22 were closed out, but, it was reported that actually there's 307 complaints, 135 were investigated for various reasons. Some were actually resolved. 172 were referred to CPC, and only 22 were closed. I just see that steep drop is just challenging to present back in knowing what is actually the number that we should be focusing on in terms of, 22 of, maybe if that reporting period it was less, maybe 172 is not the actual hard number I should be focusing on, but it's just within this chart of just historical amounts of complaints and what's being investigated and how many is being closed out. Last reporting period, we closed out 104, which is actually pretty remarkable considering that was also during the pandemic. I'm just curious, I know the staffing issues. I think my main issue is just really what is the hard number?
Yes, Council Chair. So the number 22, and when you look at them together, 172 and 22. So these 22 can also be the complaints that were received in the previous period. It cannot necessarily be the 172 that we received. So there may be an ongoing investigation in those cases. So and also, so when we reach the end of the reporting period, let's say November and December, there are some complaints that the investigators, like Ms. McDermott already mentioned, investigator complete the case, and then the case is sent out to the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board for their review. That can take a month and a half, depending on how many cases they close. So after that, so once the case file come back from the board, that file went to APD chain of command. So that takes additional a month and a half. So this number does not actually reflect the 22 cases. It's how they're just reported out, because these numbers are only reported once we receive, the board approves the cases, the case file is sent to APD, and then they, the chain of command approves it and send it back to us. And then we send the letter out to the citizen, and then the case is closed in the system. So it's a whole lot process. So the complaints that may have been closed in November, December of 2020 may not be actually reflected in the system to be closed up until February or March of 2021. So it's just a systematic issue. That's how I see it here.
Okay. Well, you know, I mean, if I'm seeing these numbers, I'm sure even those that either filed a complaint or even the officer who's facing the complaint, I worry for all of them, whether they see that the case is still being worked on, whether it's closed or not. I think that's where my concern really lies, in this discrepancies of numbers and just how it fluctuates. Because I understand, you know, there's still 15 of this reporting period that we're going to get, that's going to be rolled into the next one that we'll be getting. And I just worry that, you know, even if it's being closed and we haven't exactly seen that being reported out, there's just not really a number that we can kind of put our finger on. And also for the general public, you know, making sure that there is that due process that we're also following. And, you know, my harp is not really so much on, of course, our investigators as a situation. It's just, I guess, how we are conveying this also to the public, to the people who are actually filing these complaints, and also to the officers, because, you know, we're supposed to be closing these out into, you know, 120 days. And also, if there's extensions needed, and even just making, you know, what was reported out here, you know, how long it can take. I just, you know, if it's additional support that we can provide from council, you know, making these evaluations, whether it's funding, but also reaching out to the public, because, you know, as I stated, some of my concerns in terms of those that aren't reporting, whether it's their sexual orientation, their mental health status, because that's really where the meat of where some of these concerns really originated from, right? Is it excessive use of force to our unsheltered or, you know, certain populations that may be vulnerable? If it's conveying that to the public, when these complaints are being levied, you know, why it really is important to do that. I think it's just really, you know, just through this report, I have some frustrations there. And I hope that, you know, whether this moves on to council, that Mr. Harness is there to also address some of my concerns, and what we should be anticipating for this next report, if the numbers are skewed or not, and, you know, how we break apart the 135, and kind of where those complaints were directed. Again, you know, we will also want to really showcase success stories, right? where an informal process of mediation or not, or just communicating to our area commands and bringing about better communications, not just to our officers, area commands, or even to general public, is just really important. That was my main takeaway from this report, and kind of just almost red flags that went off as I read them. And just some of the discrepancies, and really trying to focus in that these numbers are, I guess, living because they have to roll on to the next. But I just worry that if they're rolling on to the next, that doesn't exactly give, this is almost a year out in terms of reporting, right, from July of 2020. So, I think that's just my overall observation of this report. I think that I'm not sure of my other colleagues here who share some of these concerns, whether this will be pulled out into council so that we can actually have more information, for this next reporting period of January till July, what numbers will be there, what's been backlogged, because I worry that if there's this continuation of a backlog, it's not providing real justice, not just to those that levied the complaint, but also to our officers of what's going to be closed or not, but also understanding really the needs of what the CPOA may need, in some of these recommendations in terms of budget and additional investigators, which I know we've provided, but just, what else can we be doing to prevent a backlog from occurring, is my main concern too. So I do appreciate the both of you coming on and really sitting in the hot seat as I was grilling you. Is just for me understanding this, it's much different report than what we received previously. And I think that's why it sent a lot of red flags just for myself and seeing the discrepancy and the drop in numbers. So, I do appreciate the both of you coming, especially you, Mr. Abbasi, being a fellow classmate of mine and sitting in the hot seat. And also to you, McDermott, being the lead investigator. I don't know, is that in the ordinance that the lead investigator, should the executive director not be available, or should anything happen to him or her, that you fill into that place?
Chair Senna, no, that it's not, and I fill roles depending on what the topic is, I guess you'd say. So some things I can stand in for when it comes to the investigations and the point of contact and things like that. When it comes to some of the other administrative things, no, I'm generally not. This position has been ever evolving, and there are conditions in the ordinance if the director is gone, but that was more for an extended absence. So for short-term vacations and things like that, it just sort of is what the director directs us or me to fill in or do for him. So unfortunately, it wasn't either known or understood that this was happening today. So I apologize for maybe not being prepared for all of your questions, but.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you for filling in so last minute, and again, for sitting in the hot seat. I think that, additional questions may be raised when this is brought to council, just, as a heads up to you, and also maybe to convey that to Mr. Harness. Just some of the concerns that I shared today in committee, I may be bringing back when this comes to council, just because I do worry of this backlog if it's not a true number that's being reported out, and how we can actually really highlight, of those 135, some of those success stories that we could say that, it was under mediation or not. So again, I do appreciate it, and appreciate my colleagues for also with their patience on my grilling. So councilors, do you have any other questions or comments? No, all right. So Ms. Hinojosa, if you could take the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton, Counselor Benton,
Yes.
thank you. Counselor Davis, Counselor Davis, excused. Counselor Jones, excused. Counselor Sena,
Yeah.
that passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. I'm sure that will also be coming to council with some questions. So next, we're going to move on to the next agenda item. And thank you to Counselor Borrego for your patience. I will move this for Counselor Borrego. It's R188, encouraging the Albuquerque Ditch and Water Safety Task Force to conduct a study to improve the safety of stormwater channels, arroyos, and irrigation canals, requesting that the administration of the city of Albuquerque consider the study reports, capital recommendations in the city of Albuquerque 2023 capital implementation program. I move a do pass. Thank you, Counselor Bassan, for that second. Counselors, any questions or comments? I believe there are two amendments on this bill that I'll be moving for Counselor Borrego. So the first amendment, this is committee amendment number 1. On page 2, after line 12, insert the following. I'm not going to be reading that if you can see on your screen. And the explanation for this amendment is the amendment adds findings, a statement to the resolution pertaining to the danger to unauthorized persons in the stormwater facilities, expands the composition of the Ditch and Water Safety Task Force to provide expertise relevant to the study goals as set forth in section 1 of the resolution. Thank you, Counselor Bassan. I believe that's the second. Appreciate that. Any comments or questions?
Madam Chair, I just have one clerical comment. If I may. Thank you. I don't think it's going to require any amendment to this, but if you read down on part number 2 at the very bottom paragraph, it should say the Director of City Council Services is directed to provide a staff member to, and then strike the word the, assist the Albuquerque Metropolitan Flood Control. And really, it's just grammar. And that's why you all keep me around.
Well, thank you, Counselor Bassan. I believe that could just be a technical fix that staff could do. So with that, Ms. Hinojosa, the vote on Amendment 1.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis, I believe is still excused, as is Counselor Jones. Counselor Sena,
Yes.
that passes unanimously.
All right, we will move on to committee amendment number 2 on page 3. You'll see there on the screen, and the explanation for this is the amendment appropriates funding for the stormwater facility safety study. Thank you, Counselor Bassan, for that second. Any comments, questions?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify one thing since my hand's up. I just want to make sure this 30,000 is just coming from the previous GEO bond that we've all read about, that this was already the flood indication system and then we didn't use it anyway. But I just want to clarify that that's what we're doing.
I see Counselor Borrego shaking her head, and Mr. Menicucci has also popped up. So Mr. Menicucci?
Yes, Madam Chair, Counselor Bassan, the administration today was able to identify these funds from that account, and they will reserve them for this particular purpose. But it was from that last study, is my understanding.
Thank you. From the last bond cycle.
Last bond, well, yes,
Or
actually.
the 2015?
Yeah, there's 2 bond cycles ago.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hinojosa. On committee amendment number 2.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
That passes on a 3-0 vote.
All right, thank you, counselors. We're going to go back to the resolution as twice amended. We will need a vote. So, Ms. Hinojosa.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
That passes on a 3-0 vote.
There's also a request for move for immediate action on this resolution.
Are you making the motion, Chair?
Yes, making that motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Counselor Bassan. Ms. Hinojosa.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you, and congratulations to Counselor Borrego, and thank you for staying on. So that passes. There being no further business, the Public Safety Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.